Hi, almost a year ago I've done a video where I've showcased my workflow for creating laser cut layouts with ZWCAD, while also touching upon other features of the software that I found nice and useful. And now there's a new version coming out, ZWCAD 2025. Since I like to have my hand on a pulse for promising software packages, in this video I'll check out how much things have changed and how fast is the development moving forward. But first, let's start with a short intro to what ZWCAD is. Well, it's a CAD software that offers full DWG compatibility, which makes it a direct AutoCAD competitor that also has a very similar UI. The benefit over AutoCAD is its price. You just pay once. You pay a one-time fee and you get the perpetual license, while Autodesk products have moved to a more aggressive subscription-based model. Also, it's quite a bit cheaper than AutoCAD. From my personal tests, I've never had any DWG compatibility issues, but what I have observed was a great increase in speed. It's quite fast. It's basically how fast things open up, how fast it's able to produce hatches, and so on. That snappiness is something that's hard to market, but it really adds into the experience of CAD drawing. Okay, but now the question is, how fast is ZWCAD improving, and what are these new features in 2025 version that would catch my attention? And I guess let's take a look. Alright, so I started this first point by showing you this monstrosity of a 3D model. It's actually a DWG file that is 131 megabytes large, megabytes big. I tried opening up the same file in Rhino to no success. It just hangs. Perhaps it's some compatibility issue, but most likely it's just simply the sheer amount of surfaces and the amount of complexity that there is, right? So here, the first big point that I want to show is the improvements of efficiency of 2025 version of ZWCAD, where you can just simply rotate around this monstrosity as if it's nothing, zoom in, zoom out, even simply select elements and move them around. I will talk about the gumball in the future points, but generally speaking, I'm quite impressed of how well this model is being handled by the software. And of course, in previous versions, you had improvements, same level of improvements to performance when it comes down to 2D drawings that I have already covered in my previous video. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so for the second point, I would like to show the 3D transformation improvements that ZWCAD has. Here on the right hand side, you can see my Rhino 3D model that I tend to use to experiment with different softwares and their 3D capabilities. And here I will just select it and I will export it as a step file. There we go. And I'll just call it, let's go for desktop, I'll just call it hand. Save. Automotive design seems okay. Let's just hit OK. Let's continue. Okay, so we have our hand.stp. Then here in ZWCAD, under Insert, under Import tab, we have our step import, which I can I can choose to change the import settings, which we can change different aspects of the import with it. But here I'll just choose step import. I'll go to desktop, select hand.stp, hit open, immediately jumps to the settings that we've just been presented with. Display view, immediately you will jump to isometric, visual style, sure, can be shaded. I'll talk about visual styles in just a second. Should it create a new drawing or should it import into the current drawing? Let's create a new one and let's just hit OK. You can see that the import process is, it does take a little bit of time, but it's definitely quite snappy. That's the story, right? This is a snappy program. So now with ZWCAD, I can easily rotate around the object. You can see that all of the geometries are quite well registered, I guess. And I can select the object, and now we have ourselves our gumball, right? This gumball right here that we can use to move things around, reorient things, and so on. This is a new addition to ZWCAD 2025 that, you know, does these first steps into the 3D modeling space, right? It's still, of course, not there yet compared to other dedicated 3D modeling or surfacing programs, but at least now with ZWCAD you can operate at this basic level, moving things around, you know, grabbing assets and placing them in areas where they should be placed. And that, in my opinion, for a 2D drafting, primarily 2D drafting software, is definitely good enough. So that is, you know, one of the key moments that I would like to showcase here. Just wanted to note one more thing. The step file, of course, imported as a single object, but if you just select it and you hit explode, then of course it gets separated out into, you know, these separate objects, separate entities that you can manipulate individually, right? Sorry, Z enter, oops, Z enter, O enter, zoom to object. Sorry, the muscle memory is not there. I'm too used to other different software packages, mainly Unreal Engine these days. So that's it about the 3D modeling improvements in, or 3D model handling improvements in ZWCAD. My third point that I would like to note is an option to actually drag out a file onto your separate screen. Right now, as I'm recording, of course, I can only show you properly on one screen, but let's say if you have two files opened, let's say one of the files has a beautiful circle drawn on it, and the second one, you know, is your robot arm that you're working on, and you have two screens and you're using one of the files only as a reference for the other. Before, you had to open up two separate entities. With ZWCAD 24, you needed to open up two separate entities of the program and have, you know, one model, let's say, or one drawing on one and another drawing on the second. You couldn't drag them out. But now it's as easy as just taking this drawing, clicking this tab, clicking and dragging it to the side here. And now we have a floating window, which we can just use as a reference and then do our best to redraw it, you know, properly as a robot hand. That's my interpretation right there. Copy. Needs to have 4 fingers. Oh, one more. Perfect. And a thumb, but thumb is missing, but that's close enough, right? Anyway, so that's a definite improvement. I personally, of course, use 2 monitors, and I constantly have a separate kind of reference window on my left monitor. So I'm happy with this change. All right, this one is the best. This one is the biggest, in my opinion. So I'll tell you, not a story, but I'll draw you a picture. You're an architect. You need to make a house in some area which has a big rock, or some tree that you need to save, or some old house which you shouldn't touch and which you should respect with your architecture, right? And as an architect, you need to design in that space. How do you make measurements of that thing? How do you get that object that you can't touch or that you need to be very mindful of with your design into your model? Well, you use photogrammetry or you use laser scanning, but you use some form of a scan, right? And that gives you a point cloud. with ZWCAD 2025, now you can properly operate with point clouds inside of the software, and you can use them as a reference for, to build your geometry on top of, or for your geometry to react to. So let me show you what I mean. If I were to go to, I believe it's under Insert. Yes, it is. And if I were to go to, oh, I guess I first should show you the pictures. Completely transparent. There we go. So I went to the coast of Sweden and I took a bunch of pictures of this rock. And I imagined that this rock is something that I need to be very respectful of, or this area be very respectful of when I'm creating my pavilion or something like that, when I'm making drawings, or generally speaking when I'm just constructing something, right, in here, making a design in here. So I took a bunch of pictures of the rock, 114 pictures to be precise. Then I used software called Reality Capture by Epic Games, free software, to convert these pictures into a point cloud, right? And then that converted point cloud I have just exported, and I have it as, if I remember correctly, LAS model right here. So this is that point cloud. Now, if I just click on this point cloud attach, right, and I just select that point cloud generated from a bunch of images that I took on the site, I can hit open. I can specify the insertion point on the screen, sure, or we can, honestly, this is an empty space, so we can just say that it should be at 0, 0, 0, and the scale should be set to 1. Later, you will be able to change the scale by just using the scale command. I think we're good to go. Zoom to point cloud. Once it's inserted, hit OK. Bam, there it is. Sure, from the top view, nothing too interesting, but of course, as we're drawing, we can now react to the rock properly. But a much more interesting thing happens when we look at it in the perspective view, or parallel view, but once the camera is tilted. It's actually a three-dimensional point cloud, right? And if I zoom in, you can see all of the different points that are associated with it. It's amazing how fast this draws them. These are, if I remember correctly, 16.8 million points. The frame rate of this is 60 Hertz. It's not even hitching, nothing. So that, and of course I can then take this point cloud, I can scale it, and can rotate it. I can use the same gumball to move it around, and so on. So there are ways of how to operate with it. There's of course other options here, such as point size, where I can increase the size of the points if the point cloud is sparse, or I can decrease them since this point cloud that I have is quite dense. I believe level of detail, level of detail is once you reach a really extreme level of points, your computer might start checking, so you can change up the level of detail to something less, and then just simply increase the point count, the point size, and operate with them. So there are ways of how you can manipulate this. Let me go back to normal. Then for large scale pieces, you can fly around, you can walk around, and you can swivel the camera, right? So you can look around. For this piece, since this is still like an object, I operate with it as if it was an object. But the drawing that I would draw, I would insert this point cloud in the drawing and use that as a reference for, making smart decisions, so to say. And of course, there's like an option for transparency and so on, but let's stop. There we go. Let's not. There's ways of how you can create, for instance, a section. Apologies. If we select the point cloud here and we choose what's the section height, or, is it a top section, a back section, front section, what's the alignment of the section plane? So in this case, I'll choose top section. you can see that now it's cutting through the top of my rock. And in doing so, I can take the section plane, move it down. There we go. Move it down, right, to an appropriate level. And then I can choose section line extraction. And of course, you can adjust it right here with these numbers here. But if I choose section line extraction, select point cloud object, bam, this bad boy right here, asks me, would I like to have an entire cross section? Of course I would. What's the color? Green, that's beautiful. I'll just hit create. We'll just see what happens, right? And it generates, of course it will not generate like a clean, a super clean line work for us, but it will generate enough information for us to then draw a clean drawing on top. Let's take that point cloud, move it to the side. Like that, right? So here, it's enough for me to construct the information around. Again, not ideal, but definitely better than, you know, just trying to guess. All right, let's delete the section markup. Oh, and there's also a little arrow there. Wonder what, oh, okay. If you click on the little arrow, it flips the direction of the section. Of course it does. Okay, delete that. So that's the point cloud, new additions to the point cloud that you can use and that you can operate with. I hope that this development will go further. I have heard that there is going to be an app, GIS, I believe, app that is going to be available, like a plugin that will be able to mesh this point cloud into an actual 3D geometry. Currently, I do not see that option, so I'm only talking about the raw point clouds. Let's move on to the next one. This one's also pretty good. Okay, so usually when we import PDFs, let me just fish out some quick one, or rather let's do it through the insert PDF import button right here. For instance, when we import topography PDFs, as long as they have been created with vector graphics in mind, if we hit OK, you can see, by the way, how snappy this was. It's going to import like a proper line work, drawing for you. That's the benefit of vector PDFs, right? So that's very nice. But the problem is that most of the time from the municipality, you don't get nice municipality, by the way, you don't get very nice PDFs. What you get is something like this. This is a PNG image. It's just an image, 2D image. But now what you can do is you can select this image. You can go to vectorization. First, let's select vectorization configure. And here you have two options. Either you can configure it for contours or you can configure it for CAD. Let's go for CAD. And then we expand this and we choose vectorization. Right there. Enter. And I believe if we select the image and hit yes, enter, or exit, select first directional edge or merge or break, connect or exit. No, we just X, enter, yes. You will not be able to modify the vector graphics after exiting. We're okay with that, we hit OK. Then if I select this image and I just delete it, what's there? It literally just created line work for us from the pixels from the image. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not, because it's literally from a rasterized image, right? So it had to make a lot of guesses. Is it better than just starting from scratch and trying to redraw everything? For sure it is. You know, it's much faster. Now we have stuff to snap to. It's great. I want to do one more test with, give me a second, with a very, very naughty image that we usually get. It is quite nasty, right? It is a scan, a poor scan, and this is what we tend to get from the municipality. I just want to see, you know, how much will a crappy scan break this? So if I select this image, I click on vectorization, continue, yes. Select image, this one please. Inquiry. Basically it said that the image is too small or too big. I wasn't sure. The way that it was written, you can use images within the size range. Okay, so that means the image that we currently have is too big, right? So it cannot be vectorized. That's okay. I can resize it. Just give me a second. All right, here we go. So it's resized right now to 048 by 1400 something. If I select this image right now, click on vectorization, sure, it can clear the cache. Select the image, modify the vector graphics, no. Yeah, that's fine. Select the image again, delete it, or rather, let's not delete it. Let's look at it with the line work overlaid over it, so that we can see what was the ZWCAD trying to do. So wherever it found a hatch, it managed to draw a line. Wherever it found lines, it managed to draw them. And actually the snapping is pretty close, pretty good in these areas as well. And here it seems like it's reading this as a very thick line and it's trying to find the median axis of it. That's a pretty impressive coding, honestly. That's a really, I've seen Grasshopper forums people working on this kind of a script for a while. Very useful for medieval town roofs, by the way, surprisingly. Anyway, but that's besides the point. It is messing up and it is not understanding that there should be two lines here rather than one thick one. That's fine. In terms of the text, I guess the resolution is not there, so it cannot catch the text properly. But it does manage to catch the tree in a pretty good way. You can clearly see that there is a limit to the resolution that is able to operate with. And it's funny, the stamps and the signature that I have blurred out for this video, it also is trying to reconstruct it. I find that to be quite hilarious. Let's delete the image, look at it, how it looks like. Yeah, this is something that I, of course, you know, not here, but let's not look at that whole part. But that main area there is something that I would definitely prefer using to, you know, redraw, revectorize by hand rather than using the image, right? And then trying to figure it out by myself. At least there are points that I can snap to, as I said before. Really useful thing, really great, especially for topography. Topography lines clearly does not work that well when things are hatched in and when things are filled in. Works much better with clean line drawings. And that's it. Those are the 5 points. Let's move on to the conclusion. It's quite impressive how fast things are moving. Now we have 2 points of data, right? One from 1 year ago and one right now, which means we can draw a trajectory, right? And it's I'm quite excited about the trajectory. It's going up quite well. Now in 1 more year, we'll do 1 more point of data. It's going to be either going more up or a little bit less, or it's going to keep the pace, with which we will be able to see the rate of improvement. You know, is it increasing? Is it bending upwards? Is it bending downwards, right? But that's a year away. For now, I'd suggest anyone who's working with 2D CAD to download ZWCAD, run this free trial, see if all of your drawings are compatible, which I'm pretty sure they will be. And if all is good, switch from that subscription-based model to a one-time purchase. That also happens to be quite a bit cheaper. Yep, link in the video description. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.